Got it? Good evening. Nope, still pre-live. Your red box. All right. Good evening. It is 6 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. With great respect and humility, we acknowledge and honor the lands of the Name people. The Name of people maintain their profound, unique, and spiritual connection to the land through ageless traditions, teachings, stewardships, and expressions of reciprocity. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in order for tonight's agenda? Seeing none, I will ask, is there anyone opposed to accepting the agenda as presented? All right. Seeing no one opposed, I need a motion that the minutes from the Education Committee held September 9th, 2020 be approved, please. Moved by Trustee O'Neill and seconded by Trustee Barron. Anyone opposed? And no one opposed, one abstention from Trustee Stanley as she was away. Thank you. All right, our first order of business tonight is senior staff reports. And we are going to be hearing first from Mr. Balcom and Ms. Tate. So I will now hand over the floor to you. And reminder, everyone, if you have questions, just put your name in the chat box and we'll get to them as appropriate.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you through the chair. So the entire Learning Services team is online with us this evening, and we're prepared to provide a short update on COVID Stage 2 operations, but the lion's share of the presentation tonight and our reports tonight will be on more regular education, which continues to exist despite COVID times. So to get us started, I'd like to turn the floor over to Assistant Superintendent Balcom to get us rolling with a brief overview of some Stage 2 updates.
Thank you. Through the chair, yes, as mentioned, today's focus in the Education Committee is on the education, so we're quite excited about that. The little information I'm going to update you with this evening is mostly related to our enrollment around Island Connect Ed, as well as our transition learning program, because since we've last talked, that's been one of the areas where, as we've mentioned previously, enrollment continues to shift, and the transition learning program is new for us. So I would like to present some information on those two aspects of the system before turning it over to other members of our department. As mentioned previously, our Island Connect Ed distributive learning program has seen the largest change in their student population of any of our schools. As of the end of September, we have 834 students enrolled at Island Connect Ed in kindergarten through grade 9. And then at the grade 10 to 12 level, referred to as our graduation program, students enroll individually course by course. And we have over 700 courses registered through the summer and into early September, and then an additional 1,200 courses registered through up to Monday, October the 5th. And our Island Connect Ed school takes continuous enrollment, so they will continue to enroll students 12 months of the year. So with 834 students kindergarten through grade 9 and approximately the equivalent of 200 students in grade 10 to 12 in Island Connect Ed, the school has had lots of growth, and there's lots of very positive energy as we've added staff to that building, and the existing staff are quite excited. So I'd like to extend a public thank you to the entire Island Connect staff, including, I won't name all of them, but obviously the principal, their coordinators, the returning teachers and support staff, as well as the new staff they've added, and the clerical supports, as well as temporary staff that are in some temporary roles there. So it's been a large undertaking, and we appreciate all the efforts they've made. For the transition learning program, I'd like to give you some updates on our numbers. So we've had 437 students in kindergarten through grade 7 participate in the transition learning program. As of Monday, 107 of those kindergarten through grade 7 students have returned to their home school for their in-class instruction. 14 have selected distributive learning. And there are approximately 20 students who indicated families that indicated they want to be in the transition program, and the transition learning program teachers have reached out to them, have not been able to engage those students. So the homeschools have taken on the responsibility of connecting with those families. So there's about 295 students this week who are still enrolled in kindergarten through grade 7 in the transition learning program. At the grade 8 and 9 level, there were 59 students who have participated in the transition learning program. As of Monday, 12 of those have returned to their home school. 13 have selected the distributive learning. So there's 34 students this week who are continuing on at the grade 8 and 9 level in the transition learning program. And naturally, we'll continue to work with those 34 students and the 295 students kindergarten through grade 7 as they continue in the transition learning program while they make their decisions whether they're going to return to their home school or register through Island Connect Ed. And so I'd like to just finish off by thanking the staff, not only through the transition learning program teachers, but also the staff at their home schools, those bricks and mortar schools, who have welcomed back those 119 students from the transition learning program, and who will continue to work in the coming weeks with those other additional families as they make the decision to return to their home school. So it's something that's been brand new to the district, and we've been super proud of our staff, both at the bricks and mortar school as well as our transition learning program teachers, to support those families who needed some extra time, and we'll work with them right up until November 6th at the end of that program. So there's the update on those two programs. And I'll return it back to Assistant Superintendent Tate, who will recognize the next person of our department who's going to share out some information.
Great, thanks so much. Yes, so I'll ask Director Cadwallader to give us an update around our CISS policy.
Yeah, excuse me, before you guys move on, I apologize. I was inadvertently muted, and there was a question from Trustee Barron. And also Trustee Higginson. So Trustee Barron, you're first, and then Trustee Higginson.
Chair. I feel like I wreck the flow of these meetings.
No, it was my fault. I didn't realize I was muted.
Thank you. I actually had a question for Assistant Superintendent Balcom, specifically around, there's a lot of movement that you were talking about, students moving around and in the programs that you were discussing. And I was wondering if you can clarify, you had talked about students moving from the transitional program back into in-class learning, and you talked about the continuous enrollment happening in the Island Connect Ed program. What does it look like if a student in the Island Connect Ed program decides they want to return to in-class learning? How does that transition work back into our bricks and mortar schools, and have we had any students going in that direction since September?
Okay, yeah, good question. I could have mentioned that in the update, so thanks for the reminder. So we knew that over the summer there were some families that selected the distributive learning option as their choice without even knowing anything about the transition program or even what school would look like necessarily in stage 2 in our restart. So there were some families who early on in September were registered through Island Connect Ed that made the request to return, and where there was space for those families, they have returned. And so some schools had 3 or 4 families return, some obviously didn't have any. So there was a little bit of movement back. We also know that some of our learners who have selected Island Connect Ed for the year may, after a month or 2 months or 3 months, realize that they're struggling. And so we know that normally there's not much movement from the distributive learning back to bricks and mortars, but we know that where there's space, we're gonna find a way to have those families reconnect with their home schools.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. No follow-up, Chair.
Thank you. Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. I had a question actually from a secondary parent that I thought was interesting and good about midterm reports and what that looks in the quarterly system at the secondary level, and also parent-teacher interviews in the quarterly system at the secondary level. So I'm just wondering if we have what the plan is for that. Thanks.
Okay. And so some of that will get touched on later on in the presentation, but I will just share that the reporting will be going out, our ongoing communications of student learning, which happens throughout each, typically in a semester, will happen each quarter. And schools are also looking at ways to do parent-teacher interviews. So I had a meeting this morning with our secondary folks around how they can have those communications with parents each quarter without being able to have parents come into the building like we normally do for our parent-teacher interviews. So we have the Microsoft Teams platform that parents have been able to use video conferencing. And there's also an opportunity that's just coming on board for parents to be able to phone in from a landline or from a cell phone to a Teams conference with a parent. So it's an audio conference. So we're just in the process of getting that technology up and going. And some schools are choosing just to reach out to parents through phone calls, and some are hoping to do some video conferencing coming up as early as, I believe, October the 19th is the beginning of that stretch. But more on that is coming later as well.
All right, thank you very much. And now I believe Ms. Tate, you were going to pass the meeting over to Mr. Cadwallader.
Thanks, Ted.
Hi, Laura, Heitzapka, CMC. I wanted to take this opportunity tonight just to give you some highlights of things that are going on related to your board goal of truth and reconciliation and the CSS policy. Also, something that's just popped up for us that we've managed to put in place, and also a little bit around Orange Shirt Day that happened at the end of September across the district. So back to the first one, you had hired at the beginning of last year, Stephanie Johnson to be our lead around Call to Action 57, which was to provide training for all public servants around the truth and reconciliation, history of Canada, culture of Indigenous peoples. And so one of the things that Stephanie's put in place to start this year, and the first one will be next Tuesday, is a TRC 57 speaker series. So working with UBC Press, Stephanie and the person at UBC Press, they've identified 12 authors, some of them of quite renown in Indigenous education, Indigenous learning, Indigenous governance, Indigenous history, languages. And throughout the rest of this year, each of those people will be joining us for a lunch and learn, a 1-hour speaker series. And so I'll put the link to it in the chat tonight so it can be included, but it's a TRC57speakerseries.ca. Some highlights of the people who will be joining us next week: Jerry Fontaine, who's going to talk about traditional governance and how he, as an academic and a politician, uses his own teachings from Anishinaabe land to make decisions around his nation and for his own purposes. We have Lindsay Kigata-Burrows, who's going to join us and talk about how language influences the way that she's made decisions. Joanne Archibald, Dr. Archibald, who is a UBC professor of renown, is going to join us to talk about storytelling and how that storytelling can be used in Indigenous communities and in academia and in governance to shape the way that we decide things. Paulette Reagan, who wrote The Settler Within, that has been quite influential across Canada for non-Indigenous people to recognize their own biases and their own learning along the way, will be joining us in April. And capping it off, Puglas, the Honorable Jody Wilson-Raybould, will be joining us in May to talk about her experiences as an Indigenous woman in governance and how she uses her cultural knowledge to guide the way that she's operated. So we're quite excited about that. We have 100 people from across Canada, from our own school district, from other school districts, joining us next week for Jerry Fontaine's initial one. And if you're interested, please go to that website, have a look at the ones that appeal to you, or register for all of them. Second thing I wanted to share is that we've through our superintendent's office, set in place, as we had before with our beloved Pearl Harris before she passed away. George Seymour is going to join us. He started his first one on Monday evenings from 4 o'clock to 5 o'clock, teaching Hulkameetnam. We used to hold those in the board office, and now through the amazing technology of Teams, we have had about 40 people join us last Monday for George's first Hulkameenum lesson with us. So please check with Karen around a calendar if you have time between 4 and 5 to join George. It's unlike any language lessons that you might have experienced before, because George, besides being a fluent speaker and a first language speaker of Hulkameenum, also is a carrier of stories from all sorts of nations up and down this coast. And so he shares those stories in some form or fashion in those language lessons, because they're hard to separate language from culture. And the last thing I wanted to share with you is Orange Shirt Day. So we celebrate that each year, and celebrate's not the right term for it, although our students engage with this at great length. It's supported by our staffs in schools. We have some amazing things that happen, and I ask for those schools to share some ideas with us. Patty McCarthy posts those on our Indigenous Education Facebook page within the school district. One that I really encourage you to have a look at, and I watched it for the second time today, was a music video put together by our Alt Studio 68 crew at the Learning Alternatives. It's an amazing display, first of all, of technology, but also of collaboration, interaction with each other, and guided by Snuneymuxw Elder through the production of it, and supported by an amazing teacher and musician there, Steve Holmberg.
Thank you very much. Does anyone have any questions for Mr. Cadwallader? I just have one quick one. For this speaker series, are there limits to how much space we have in terms of numbers for people to sign up?
Yes, good question. Thank you, Chair. The limit is 500 per session.
Okay, so we shouldn't worry.
No, we shouldn't worry about that at all.
Okay, thank you. All right.
Thank you.
All right, so now we have item 8.3, Department of Learning Services, General Startup.
Great. We're continuing on. Thank you. I will ask Director Poulin to give us an update around teaching and learning across the district.
Thank you very much. Through the chair, I want to just highlight some of our general, and as Ms. Tate had already said, some traditional school opening things that have happened. So we've had, some of our elementary schools that have offered different approaches to open house or to welcoming parents into their child's classroom without being able to open the doors and have them come through. So some of our teachers out there have done virtual tours or PowerPoints and images sent home, and videos being sent home to try and find other ways to let families see what's happening. Sometimes it's been a newsletter to just let them know, but there's been just other ways to be able to do that. We've also had our schools participate in things like the Terry Fox Run still, and we're having some of our schools starting to do some virtual assemblies. So I heard some great news around virtual Orange Shirt Day assemblies and Spirit Day assemblies that are starting to be done virtually to still be able to pull the whole school together in some capacity. Did you want me to go right into the next part?
Yes, please. You can just keep rolling.
Okay, thank you. The next part that I was speaking about was in regards to some of our assessment practices and timelines and purposes across the district. So teachers, of course, use a variety of assessments to inform their instruction for the year. These would include some of our own district created assessments, which I will speak to. Teachers' own classroom-based assessments that they use to inform their instruction, and then the foundation skills assessment. The FSAs used to occur later in the year, so they used to be around May. For the last couple of years, they have been written in the fall, usually around in October, November, and schools have been able to access that as another piece of information that about their students and about their class that the teachers and the school can use. This year, the FSAs are written in grade 4 and grade 7, and this year they have been postponed to January due to COVID. Some of the other district assessments that we are using and have been using right across is the Nlps literacy screener. So the Nlps literacy screener is for kindergarten to grade 9 in different components, of course. So the kindergarten to grade 3 one has just been renamed the PARS, the primary assessment for reading skills. And it has been updated quite significantly just this past spring. All the updates have been shared out with staff. And it focuses on basic reading skills such as letter recognition, letter sound, rhyming, initial and ending consonants. And it basically provides teachers with information on what each child needs, as well as what some of the larger class pictures are and trends are in the classroom, so that they can use that to inform their instruction. From grade 4 to 9, we have a reading assessment that has been done, and it's been done for a number of years, and it looks at their ability to use various reading power strategies, predicting, comprehension, inferencing, those types of things. And the tool, this tool has been used for a number of years, and we are looking at reviewing it further and making some revisions to it, but it has been an effective tool. The other piece that we've added at the intermediate level is a tool called the Ellis, which a teacher can go into. So if a child is having some difficulty in the intermediate levels with kind of still those decoding pieces, they can use the Ellis to start to take a look at what are the trends that are showing up that they need to go back and review, and what kind of intervention is needed for those children. At grade 8 and 9, they do the same reading assessments as well, and they use that data right across all of the areas for that. The other piece that's new for the assessments at kindergarten to grade 7 for the reading assessment is we have now a locally developed data system that's called ESS. Teachers can enter the information while completing the assessment with the student right there. And after it's completed, it provides reports that does give the teacher trends as well as student specific information. And it's great to have that locally developed, because we can then make adjustments and changes to it as we need to, and improvements on it. All of this information, of course, always informs our conversations at PLCs and looking at student needs in schools and the supports that we want to put in place. We also do school-wide rights for grades 1 through 7 in regards to looking and use the writing standards to look at those. This is the first year that we'll be able to enter that school-wide right information into that locally developed ESS as well, which will give us a much better way of being able to look at some of those trends. And then of numeracy, at this point in time, teachers currently use the various classroom-based formative assessments. We have been developing a district-wide K-3 numeracy assessment, and there has been some work at the Island Numeracy Network on a grade of 4 to 7 numeracy formative assessment, and we'll be looking at implementing that further across the district this year.
All right, we have a couple of questions here. Is this a good time for you, Ms. Poulin?
Sure.
All right, Trustee Stanley.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you for that. I'll do my best to speak clearly. When we're talking, so thank you. I'm quite fascinated about measure creation and reviewing, and so I wanted to learn a little bit more about that. I'm really excited to hear that we're developing a numeracy measure. But so I guess my question, it was triggered when you said we had reviewed or we were reviewing I think the older reading assessment measure, but we had already updated the younger version of it. And now I hear that we're also developing a measure as well. Can you give me just a little bit about what goes into, like, from a, like we can talk about psychometrics, right? Like what goes into the creation of these measures and how is it that we evaluate them? So when you say we go through a review, can you tell me a little bit about like what kind of information we use to review it and what that, how do we make those decisions?
So I can speak to the primary one because that's the one that's been most recently, and I wasn't part of the review last year, but I do know that the learning coordinators worked with also a couple of the school psychologists to go through what were some of the assessments being used, what information was it providing for us, and how was that helping us to inform and helping teachers kind of get a sense of what the students, how the students were doing based on the curriculum, their age, the grade, and those pieces and the trends that it would show us in regards to reading development.
All right, do you have a follow-up, Trustee Stanley?
If we could, I don't know if we could hear about a little bit about how the numeracy is being developed. I mean, is that the same process, or maybe we could just learn a little bit about how that measure is being created?
I actually don't feel comfortable answering that just because I wasn't part of the numeracy assessment creation, because the intermediate one. So I'm not sure if Assistant Superintendent Tate, if you were more a part of that, just because I'm just coming in on this one.
No, thank you. Through the chair. We have a variety of networks, island networks on Vancouver Island that cover everything from, gosh, Indigenous education, literacy, numeracy, etc. And it's this island numeracy network that has been running for quite some time with all of our partners on the island. And it's this group that has created, it used to be called a district math assessment. We used to call it the DMA. It's now called the INA, which is the Island Numeracy Assessment. And it's this group of, that includes instructional leaders, numeracy specialists, etc. That's been our touch point and our go-to. And we've built this, well, all of these assessments in a collaborative fashion for many years now.
All right, thank you. Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. Thanks for this info. It's really interesting. So these NLPS, I think, you have to mute, you good? Okay. Sorry, I was getting some feedback from Tanya there. If these NLPS screeners that you talked about in assessments, are they done in every classroom across the district?
Yes, that is what is asked of the schools, is that they are done.
Okay. Do parents have access to the information? Can they request the information?
They can request it. Sorry, Ms. Tate, I thought that you were going to answer as well. Did you? They often, depending on the formative assessment conferences, it's oftentimes where information will be shared if it's appropriate at that time to bring some of that information forward to let them know. A lot of the times it's used to show us kind of trends in classrooms of areas that the whole class will need. If there's a child that has some certain areas that they need some intervention on, then the parents would be reached out to in that capacity.
I'll add a little bit through the chair if that's okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so it's a lot of the data is numeric data. We can certainly give specifics around, medial sounds or beginning sounds or comprehension, etc. We just wanted to be really cognizant of not, if you remember, we would, sort of when we did reading assessments where readers were scored depending on particular levels, and then, well, you're level 12 and you're level 8 and you're level 27. We were really trying to avoid having these sort of labels placed on children at points in time. So generally teachers aren't sharing specific quantitative data. They're trying to talk more around where the child is in generalities and their particular reading areas without getting too specific and getting too numerical, trying to avoid labels or trying to avoid sharing information that maybe non-educators might not have anything to hang that on and understand it at that level. So we're trying to keep it a little bit more user-friendly.
Okay, do you have a follow-up, Trustee Higginson?
Only to say that I think there, as a parent in the systems, this is the first I'm hearing about them. I know they're happening, right? Like I know they happen. I see like things come home in little like long lists of words and your kid is this. But I think outside of all the numeric stuff that you're talking about, I think it would be really valuable information for us to ensure that during parent-teacher interviews, that's being talked about so that families are aware of the types of formative assessments that are being done to help form the teaching and learning strategies of the year. I think that would be really beneficial information in some way at some point when we get to stop talking about sinks and hand sanitizer and get back to learning, which I'm loving this conversation for, so thank you.
All right, before I see Trustee Stanley has another question. Before I get to that question, does anyone else who hasn't had a question want to ask anything? Okay, Trustee Stanley. Can't hear you, muted.
How's this?
That's good.
My mute button has been weird tonight. I was saying that I was actually kind of following up on what Trustee Higginson was saying, which is the communication of this. This is, I am a big fan of early assessment, and I think this is phenomenal. I think this is super important. We know that the better we understand learning challenges earlier, the easier they are to be dealt with, and the more likely we are to overcome or prevent the lowering of self-esteem, the undermining of student engagement, the identities as one as a not a good student or stupid or whatever labels children acquire of themselves. So I can't thank you enough. Like this is so important. So immense gratitude for that. I wanted to say, I got so excited, I forgot. I'm just thank you for it, but as well, I would like that we communicate that we do this. Oh, I remember now. So communicate that we do this so families know that we are doing that earlier assessment, and that is reassuring that if, you know, we're going to be, because we're going through this process, we're more likely, or at least, you know, at an advantage to kind of identify some of those challenges at an earlier age. So, you know, I think that that's really good information for parents to have, because this is something that we do that not all school districts do. And so, or at least at this level. So I'm really glad to hear that. My question that I'd forgotten that has now come back to me is, when we do have children, let's stick with reading just because I know that a little bit better. And let's say we're seeing indicators of potentially a learning disability. What's can you tell me a little bit about that process? So we're doing these assessments, we're seeing significant concerns. What does that trigger in our district?
So again, when the classroom teacher has a chance to take a look, that would then have a conversation either at a PLC or the school-based team that would be taking a look at what supports either we need to put in that classroom for, you know, some interventions, or with individual students around interventions specific to that skill set. And sometimes we would then, if there's certain areas for certain students, we might be, you know, doing a little bit further looking in regards to what are some of the actual reasons that the challenges are there, and digging deeper and having some specific intervention. I know that we've had various different interventions across the district, but I know that recently we've been using the press intervention to kind of get some of those pieces in place. So this initial screener lets us just see where students are having some challenges, or if they're not having challenges and they're just moving along and progressing quite nicely, and then we can put other interventions in place.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other actual questions for our presenters to dig in deeper and on any understanding matters? Okay. All right, then I'm going to hand it back to you, Miss Tate, or Miss Poulin.
Okay.
Oh.
Director Poulin, did you have anything else to share? Any further updates?
Yep, I just had one further one, and that was in regards to our learning coordinators. I just want to say that it's been a pleasure working with them for the start of this year. They've had some new projects that kind of came on this year that we weren't necessarily planning for at the end of last year. One is, of course, the elementary learning frameworks that we spoke to last time, that we are continuing to move forward and roll out as the year progresses. We're also looking at shifting over to some Teams talks, which will be some collaborative conversations for our teachers to be able to join into, going through Teams and we'll be looking at different ways to provide those supportive mechanisms for our teachers. And then, as I just mentioned, the rollout of the PARs and the ESS was a big one to get us going. And then supporting schools with some of the adjusted assessment and reporting documents for secondary schools in regards to the quarterly. So there's been some updates on that, and recommendations to our elementary on how they can approach the formative assessment conferences at the elementary level when they're, of course, not going to be in person. We've worked together as a team to ensure that, you know, we do have all areas of our learning and curriculum covered by various different coordinators, and a primary contact of where we can reach out to people for all of the different various areas of the curriculum. But we're also really working on that idea of collective ownership for everything, so that it's not one person tagged to it. So it's a primary contact that might take leads on various different projects and ideas, but that we're doing some real collective ownership. So just, it's a great team to work with, and looking forward to the year with them.
Great. Thank you so much.
Just before we move on, I Trustee Higginson pointed out to me, I did miss Miss Cornwaith. So if you want to jump in, Joe, regarding assessment briefly.
Sorry, slow connection. Thank you, everyone. I just wanted to mention that, first of all, thank you for this new tool. It's excellent, and I've had a good look at it, and lots of teachers are incredibly appreciative of it. The only statement that I wanted to make is that teachers do have autonomy when choosing assessment tools. And most teachers are choosing this assessment tool, but there is autonomy when it comes to the selection of assessment tools used in the classroom. That was all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Question from Trustee Higginson for clarification, or anyway, Trustee Higginson.
Thanks. I just, I'm a little confused now because earlier I said, are these assessments being used in every classroom? And we said yes, but now I'm hearing that maybe they're not because teachers can choose not to use them. So I guess what I'm trying to figure out is if we do have some kind of standardized ability across the district to understand important places to target resources out of data that is standardized across the district.
Okay. So through the chair, I'll go back to the original statement in that, as to my understanding and my knowledge, that these assessments are occurring in every classroom. Now, if there is a situation, because these are teacher created, as Joe's mentioned, they're solid assessments. If there is a situation where a teacher wants to exercise their autonomy, what the principal will do then is they'll have a conversation with them and ensure that, understanding why and what their assessment is, that the assessment needs to assess all of the same information that our own district PARS assessment assesses. I feel like Dr. Seuss there. So that the same information can be entered into our data system, and we're going to get the same, it's going to have the same data and the same information to provide that formative assessment piece for teachers. That doesn't occur very often. It doesn't, and to my knowledge and understanding, we have every teacher, or the data, sorry, from every classroom is entered into this data system with the numerics that we're looking for. But the lion's share, and again, to my understanding, that these assessments are happening in every classroom.
Yeah, and that's my understanding as well. I just wanted to clarify that teachers do have the autonomy as long as Assistant Superintendent Tate said that they're meeting all of the requirements of the assessment.
Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you. All right, so I will hand it back to you, Ms. Tate, to show us where we're at.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm going to ask Director Olson to pop on her camera and give us some updates around our compassionate learning communities.
Hi, thank you, Ms. Tate, and through the chairs. Thank you very much for the opportunity to highlight some of the work that we're doing around compassionate school communities. This year, we're going to be focusing on 3 key areas: mental health literacy, social emotional learning, and of course, trauma-informed practice. As a starting point, just wait for that hot rod to go by. As a starting point, all of our schools participated in a compassionate learning community assessment. And the data that we're getting back from the survey will provide us with a district view of what's going on in schools, an inventory of existing practice, and it'll also give us some ideas on what we need to do moving forward. We closed the survey last week, so we're still in the early stages of compiling that information. And then I have a few other highlights of things that are already underway that are worth noting and exciting. I believe we've already spoke a little bit about the Connect Parent training. We had 17 children, youth, and family support workers complete the 3-day intensive Connect Parent training, and it's an attachment-based 10-week parenting program that was developed by the Maples Adolescent Treatment Center. And so we're really excited to have this opportunity to offer to our parents. Our first session will be held in the North End before Christmas, and then other areas to follow. It's a real coup for us to be able to have this training because normally it's done in person, but Lynn Brown worked some magic and was able to get them to agree to do it online. So we're really excited about that. Each month, Lynn, in collaboration with elementary and secondary school counselors, will be developing a monthly mental wellness newsletter, and hopefully everybody here tonight has seen it. The topics for the newsletter will be submitted by counselors based on the needs they identify in their school. September's edition is called the Reunite and Return to Calm. It provides tips and strategies that are helpful to students, families, and staff. The newsletter is currently available on our website under the COVID-19 page, and each month the newsletter will be distributed to schools so that they can share it out with their community. So excited about that. That's new for us this year. Our food security program is live and well and in collaboration with the Nanaimo Lady Smith Schools Foundation. It's continuing and we're just so happy to be able to provide this this program to our schools. Our community school coordinators work with school-based staff to identify school needs and deliver the food weekly to the schools. School staff manage the preparation and distribution out to families. And just another news piece around our food security is that we have a new site for a depot, and it's at Woodlands, and the renovations are almost complete. Another new item is called the Regular Student Contact Protocol, and we've just rolled this out. This is our first week. It's a mechanism to ensure that we're doing our very best by students to ensure that nobody's falling through the cracks. It's a protocol where teachers will report out to principals weekly on students that either they haven't been able to contact with or student make contact with, or students that have been engaged and then aren't engaged. Principals will do an extra step from their end, looking at to try to locate the families and reconnect them, and then they'll submit them up to us, and we'll use every tool available to us to try to track down our missing families. So that's something new. And lastly, Lynn wanted me to share a few highlights of things that are good that are happening during COVID time. On a positive note, it's provided us with more of an opportunity to collaborate with ministries. Currently, Island Health, MCFD, and the school district folks were meeting regularly to standardize a process for the care of our students that are transferring amongst our ministries or coming out of medical situations where we really need to know we need to wrap around them. That's fairly new program, and we're really happy about that. Another new item is that the district continues, I guess it's not new, to enjoy access to pediatric care through referrals from schools and vetted through Lynn. Dr. Aruda is able to meet with families and students as well as school teams to answer any questions they have and continue to be able to be connected with community pediatricians. So pretty excited about that. And those are my updates.
I'll pause if there's questions, Chair.
All right, any questions, anybody? I'm going to just quickly ask one. Oh, Trustee Barron first. Yeah, Trustee Barron.
I don't mind waiting for you to go, Chair, if you wanted to go first. It's
okay. Just regarding the learning coordinators, can you remind me how many we have and the areas they work in that we have our coordinators in?
Ms. Poulin, can you come back on to respond to that question?
How many areas we have them?
Yes, how many areas?
It's
I want to
right,
answer that a different way.
Yeah,
I know it's right across the curriculum, elementary, secondary, early years, so many different areas of the curriculum, Indigenous, literacy, numeracy, environmental stewardship. It's all the whole gamut all the way across.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to confirm that we're still covering all the gamuts. Like I'm specifically was thinking more around racism and SOGI. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely, and that's covered by which is why I didn't want to go through specifically individual by individual, because it's such a broad scope and lots of people doing lots of different areas to represent all of them.
Okay, good. Thank you. Now do you and Trustee Barron.
Thank you, through the chair. As I was listening to our Director of Instruction, Margaret Olson, speaking, my camera wasn't on, so you couldn't see how excited I was getting about every new item that Margaret was bringing forward to us, all exciting work happening in our district. I got really excited to see the mental wellness newsletter when it got sent out, and loved the material in there. I think it's so helpful and useful for our community. To hear that there's a new site for the food security program, I think that's fantastic, and it seems like that location will be a really good fit to be able to distribute that food effectively in the community. The piece that I was hoping that you might be able to speak a little bit more to was around the regular student contact protocols. And I'm wondering, who do we have, I guess, I'm not going to get too specific, but in general, what does our process look like and our capacity look like to reach students who have fallen through the cracks? The students that, you know, we can't get in touch. And I know you said that we use every tool available, and I was just hoping for you to maybe provide a couple of examples around that. I'm just trying to understand, because I know right now is a particularly challenging time for many students. And so, yeah, just trying to understand a little bit more.
So from the school's perspective, there are a number of things that they would do right away. The first place they would go to is MyEd and the extended contacts that may be available to reach out to cousins or aunts and uncles, or look at previous registrations in school files that might provide some they might be able to find contact information for parents. We also have, through the Ted Caldwellder's program, we have some outreach people that also have, and Ted can speak a little bit more to this Ted, you came on. Did you want to speak a little bit to this?
Certainly. Yeah, through the chair, I can talk about that.
And just before I pass it over to Ted, in conversation with Jana Rose, who's our youth liaison, RCMP, we also have the ability, she sometimes has more contact information than we do. If there's been situations where the RCMP has been involved, that's not a go-to in regards to, are we going to go bang on doors? It's just trying to find ways to find people to make sure that if they're in our community, we're able to reach out and touch base with them. So I'll pass it over to Ted, and he can speak a little bit more about what he can provide.
Okay, through the chair, thanks for that, Margaret. And yes, we have two outreach workers in our Aboriginal Education Department, and they work primarily with our secondary school programs. And so if students are non-attenders or partial attenders or need some assistance in staying connected to school, they're identified at the school level, and the school can connect with our outreach workers to go straight to homes and connect with students there. They spend a lot of time just making sure those students are okay and that they have what they need. Also last year, Director Olson, Steele, and myself formed a starting relationship with a step-up program at Quamat Lalem. Quamat Lalem is a delegated authority through MCFD, and so they have a number of children that they're responsible for who are placed in foster care. And so we've identified who those students are through them. We're able to have those conversations back and forth with them around attendance, around academic progress and those sorts of things. And so if a student would fall off our charts, we'd be able to reach out. And Quamat Lalem is just one of those organizations, but we'd be able to reach out with them and take advantage of the resources and staffing that they have to connect with those families as well. So a couple of examples. Thank you.
Thank you, Ted. At the secondary level, I just also want to mention that in a quarterly system, timing is really of the essence. And if children are moving, are becoming disengaged, we want to get on that right away. So it's just another level of support that we want to make sure that we're implementing. So it's brand new.
Do you have a follow-up, Trustee Barron?
No, I appreciate that response, and also appreciate the work that's being done to prevent the disengagement from happening in the first place. It's good to get that information around the outreach workers working in the community if they do become disengaged, and sounds like there's lots of great work happening. So thanks for everything you do. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Team effort.
Thank you. Trustee Stanley, you have a question.
I do. It's a quick one because I have a follow-up, and I wanted to just ask about that. Was it called a mental health newsletter or mental health? I'm not sure what it's.
mental wellness newsletter. Yes.
Right. How was that sent out?
It was through communications. It was also posted on our website, and then it was sent to principals last week to circulate in their community. So if there hasn't been a recent communication with parents from the school, perhaps we might have missed the newsletter for September. It may be going out a little bit later.
Okay, that might explain it, because I was going to say I'm that parent that has 3 kids at 3 different schools and feels overwhelmed in the communications piece and misses things, and figured, of course, I missed something again, and was going to just, use myself as an example of when parents don't actually get to do what they hope they can do. And sounds like you've already addressed that, which is the send it out to the schools and maybe whether or not it goes on the school website, but somehow get it out to the parents, because that obviously for people like me is needed. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you, Trustee Stanley. Seeing no further questions, I'm going to give it back to you, Ms. Tate.
Thank you. And last but not least, we are going to hear from Director Steele, and she will give us an update around inclusive education.
Thank you. So people may have noticed I got excited enough about my turn. I tried to jump on before Director Olson, so I apologize for that. I have the pleasure of sharing some things about Inclusive Ed Startup tonight, and I'm really excited actually about, like others have said this evening, it is really nice to get back to the business of teaching and learning and working and supporting families and kids, and talk a little bit less about COVID. So we doing lots of that still too, but in the midst of that, we did a very different Inclusive Ed Kickstart this year, and it's we're getting some really positive feedback from the system about it. So in the past, it's been a day-long meeting in Meeting Room A with primarily the student support teachers from the elementary schools, and then there have been separate meetings for counselors and secondary folks. And while it was a great way to reach everybody, it meant a really super long day with a lot of information all at once for one team, and then maybe not the same message for other teams. So this year we built it collaboratively, and we had elementary and secondary folks both involved, counselors and SSTs involved. We did it as we affectionately described it as a choose your own adventure, because we put a slate of opportunities together that some of them were mandatory for some people but optional for others depending on where they were. So for example, when we did the session around Year at a Glance and how to get started, it was mandatory for anybody new in their roles, but people who were seasoned could come if they wanted an update, or they could join the meeting half an hour later. Some of the sessions were specifically for counselors, but SSTs or admin could participate if they chose. So it meant that we had a great opportunity to really differentiate our approach for sharing information and really key in on the aspects of their various roles for different people, depending on what their roles in the system were, but also build some community and help teams that don't always work right together get to know each other and be part of some common dialogue. So we really, initial feedback is that it was appreciated, and I think whether we stick with teams or go to a bit of a hybrid thing down the road, I think we'll wait and see. But for this year, it brought us together as a support community, and it felt good. So now we're in the middle of Iup Camp. So what that looks like is a bunch of coaching sessions where if people have a particular type of IEP or group of designations that they're supporting, like for example, last week we did a session for people writing functional goals for kids that are in life skills programs and doing lots of community, or usually community opportunities and things. How do we write really meaningful goals? How do we do really good assessments so we know what those goals should be? How do we collect the data so we can monitor how they're doing? Did a bit of a coaching session and then just an open work session where they could collaborate. And again, that was in person, or some people booked individual appointments with our inclusion support coordinators to get a bit of personalized coaching. So, that's just getting underway, but we're really excited about that. Beyond Kickstart and IEP camps, we have some other things going on. So we have a few new positions that are allowing us to spread out the supports and the learning a little bit. So I'm really pleased to welcome Cindy Hack, she's the vice principal at Georgia Elementary, but she's also has a chunk of district time this year, and she's helping support our 2 district skills programs at Georgia and NDSS, but also working with me and the inclusion support team. We're building a bit of a continuum this year around functional supports. So rather than considering life skills classes as an environment, we're trying to take a look at what do we offer in those skills classes in our schools, what do we offer in our district skills programs, and how does that fit on the big picture of, you know, universal access in classrooms up to really intensive, targeted, individualized support for our kids who need the more additional layers and more detailed planning. So that's one of our big projects this year. We're also looking at doing some work around transition planning. We have lots of documents out there, you know, employee safety plans and integration plans and de-escalation protocols and elopement protocols and all these things we do that are very individual for some of our kids who need them. And we're trying to put a bit of a frame around that. I think Inclusion Support's done a beautiful job coaching teams and helping them find a way to use those documents in a really meaningful way with their planning. And teams are ready to be a little more independent, but it's a really big landscape. So we're trying to build them in a way that teams can access them and know what to do and reach out for support when they reach the moments where something's new. In addition to that, of course, we have our new inclusion support coordinator, who is also a counselor by training. And so her project is a little bit less directly with inclusion support and a little bit more with Director Olson and Lynn Brown, because she's supporting the Compassionate Schools community work. And that's really actually wonderful, because that is such an umbrella for all things inclusion and connection and community, and it fits beautifully with the work on the inclusion support team. So we're looking at growing that. We also have a new district SST position that's about a week old now, and the gentleman, Sean Williams, who's taken that role on for us, he's new to us this year from Alberta, but he comes with lots of experience supporting complex learners, and he's helping us bridge some of those children, again, that have not necessarily found their place back at school post-COVID. So some of the kids with immunocompromised needs who are not able to join us, some of our learners in transition who, you know, don't know where they're going to land for the year yet, but we know that kind of the packages that are coming out from the transition teachers might not be well matched to their needs, and they need a little bit more. Even though they're in transition, we need to really make sure they're getting meaningful opportunities while their families are working through their process. So he's supporting some of those teams. And he's also going to be a really big help to ICE, because we know we have lots and lots of kids that have moved there with additional needs this year as well. And the SST that was there certainly, you know, needed somebody else on the team to make sure that we could reach out to all those families. And he will be working with a yet to be named outreach EA, who is also going to be part of the community of people who is able to reach out to families who are at home and not at school to make sure that they have what they need in terms of the specialized supports and interventions. A couple of other projects, we're doing lots of thinking about our EA community and wanting to support them. So we have a brand new EA handbook hot off the presses. The first draft was done last September, so I'm awfully excited that it's now finished and in the hands of the team. It was ready just in time to get in the hands of our new EA practicum students, which just started this week. So that feels really exciting to be working with our community that way as well. And I'm working collaboratively with HR and a couple of reps from CUPE who were looking at PLCs and Pro-D and opportunities for EAs and making sure that they've got some really great learning opportunities, virtual and otherwise, this year. So that's really exciting. We're also continuing with the Tier 2 and 3 reading intervention stuff that we started last year. That's the Preston Haggerty tools that we've been using. So the school psychology team is really pleased to be looking at some opportunities to collaborate with teachers and move that initiative forward. And then the last one I'll share a little bit about tonight is, as of yesterday, we began a series with our elementary French immersion team. So the student support teachers and principals from each of our immersion schools got together yesterday, and we were talking about the continuums of supports and interventions for immersion. So, you know, what's the same and different about an early immersion setting? What kinds of things can we offer to our little guys that maybe aren't coming easily to language learning, literacy learning, and how can we support them? So that was a super high energy meeting. I can't actually wait to get that team together again. I left with a fairly lengthy to-do list of just balls to get rolling and things to explore, and we're planning on getting together regularly this year. So yeah, it feels really good to get back to some of this stuff and be talking about kids and learning.
That is very exciting stuff. Do we have any questions for Ms. Steele or for anyone else in the team? Okay, I'm seeing a lot of smiles and thumbs up and good comments in the chat, but I think we don't have any more questions. Trustee O'Neill, did you have a question?
Oh, well, I haven't spoken tonight through the
Awesome.
chair. No
Okay.
question, just a general comment, and that was me that put the thumbs up in the chat. I mean, the enthusiasm is just resonating through my computer screen from all of the presenters tonight, and I share in that enthusiasm because it is nice to be able to shift our focus a bit. And, you know, hearing, you know, from all of you, but Carrie, you know, that's some really fantastic work that's being done. And so, you know, to you all for that work and for helping us all shift the focus back to, I think we all really wanted to be all along. So,
yes, thank you, all of you. You very great presentation. I see a question from Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. I hate to be the one to do this. Okay, first of all, you totally filled my bucket. Thank you. It's so nice to talk about learning. I am going to bring up the C word, not that C word, the other C word. So COVID, I'm going to bring up COVID and say, I just didn't quite get a full answer to my question about parent-teacher interviews or midterm assessment stuff for secondary in the quarterly system. So I did hear earlier about, you know, the use of technology and stuff, but I also know that, you know, there's early dismissal. There's so much that we don't think about when we're in that rapid response mode of planning for a quarterly system and all that stuff. So I'm just wondering if there are going to be each quarter parent-teacher interviews for the opportunity for parents to, knowing how short and condensed that time is, to learn if their children are struggling or where or how they're doing in the quarters. Sorry to bring up that topic.
No, yes, and through the chair, and thank you for bringing that back. So, yeah, the answer is yes. So each quarter there's going to be an opportunity for ongoing communication, especially with that as abbreviated. And a lot of our quarters are about 9.5 weeks long, so it is quite a short, condensed sprint through a subject area. So there will be opportunities, and like I said, you know, some of it, because we can't have parents in the building, is going kind of old school. It's a phone call home, but we're hoping that this first round we have 3 of our schools that are going to try the Teams video conferencing like they would traditionally. So traditionally, those schools would have an online booking system. Parents would book an appointment time, and they're hoping to do that through Teams. So a parent will be able to either call into a video conference, or even through a landline. At least the teacher will be in a video conference and the parent will be invited to call in. So we're hoping to do that at each quarter. And I actually think in some ways, you know, when we look at which things might work out better for the system, you know, the potential where we have, let's say a family has 3 children in a school, and sometimes it's hard to book appointments that kind of line up, you know, one after the other, and so sometimes the odd teacher connection doesn't happen, and the parents go home and their child says, "Did you see my teacher such and such?" Like, no, I was trying to get to everybody. Well, if you're at home and you're calling into a video conference, having a 20-minute or 30-minute or 40-minute gap between conferences is okay if you're at home, because you can just go about your other business and then pop back into a conference. So we're hoping that it'll allow for a better connectivity for some parents who often find the time difficult to get to the school for those opportunities. So there's always some upsides, and we'll take away some best practices and move forward with that. So.
That's a great point, Mr. Malcolm. I hadn't really thought about that, but technology could be quite useful in some ways.
It has been, and I'll share an unrelated thing with apologies in advance. But some of our schools have done, you know, either grade-wide assemblies or school-wide assemblies through Teams, where you save all the time of students having to travel down the hallway into the gym and getting them all organized and worrying about being on uncomfortable benches and stuff. So some schools have reported out, you know, hey, I'm going to do this every year because this worked really well. The students loved it, the teachers loved it. So there's always some positives, and technology has been, you know, it's not the be all end all, but we're sure having people in the system try to find ways to make the technology do good things so they can connect with their families.
All right, thank you. And I see a comment from Mr. Robinson, then a question from Ms. Cornthwaite.
Yeah, just very, very briefly, but I've been on this board for 9 years now. And year after year, I become more impressed with senior management and right across the board, all our staff. But after tonight's presentation, I ain't got no more room for impressions. I am just so blown away with what we heard tonight. So thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bill. I always love your enthusiasm. Question from Ms. Cornthwaite.
Sorry, still dealing with the world's slowest computer. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Thanks, everyone. Oh, I think my video may be going live now. So my question is actually for Assistant Superintendent Balcom with regard to those parent-teacher interviews for the quarter system. Will there be more release days added to the calendar for that to account for the fact that there will be more time needed for those parent-teacher interviews? I'm just wondering how that's going to be accounted for in terms of the time commitment.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. And through the chair, with the quarter system, of course, at the secondary level, teachers have half as many classes and half as many families to connect with. So in accordance with the School Act, we will still do early dismissal up to 4 times a year, which we've traditionally done. So we'll do early dismissal once each quarter for the purpose of parent-teacher interviews, which will allow those teachers to connect with their parents. And it won't be double, it won't be twice as many, because we're not doing it for 4 classes, we're just doing it for 2 classes at a time. And schools have taken that into consideration. They're not asking teachers to do longer times to connect with parents, knowing that there's less parents to connect with in each of those quarters. So they'll stick with the 4 early dismissals throughout the year.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Mr. Saywell.
Yeah, perhaps I could just express my gratitude to the Learning Services Department. It was refreshing to talk about teaching and learning for a little bit. Seems like COVID has overwhelmed us, in the last 6 months or so. And I'm happy to share the same excitement that trustees have expressed with talking about teaching and learning again. So more of that and less of COVID moving forward, perhaps. Thanks again to the Learning Services Department.
Yes, thank you very much to the team. That was a very, very exciting and enlightening presentation. And I was saying to my mother yesterday, we were talking about some things, and I said, I got COVID fatigue. So just to not have to talk about COVID too much tonight has just been wonderful. So, and thank you all for your hard work and for your time and your effort. All right. So are you guys done?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. So seeing that we have finished with that item, we now move on to item 9.1, which is correspondence referred from the board meeting. We have an NDTA letter regarding FSAs that we were sent back here. And one of the things we need to do in speaking to Chair McKay this morning is give some direction to the board as to how we want to respond to that letter. But it's also, because it's a broad topic, there is opportunity for any questions that trustees have for staff around FSAs or any of the content of the letter. So does anybody want to open discussion, or somebody jump in? Okay, Trustee Higginson has a question.
Thank you, through the chair. My question is actually for our NDTA rep regarding some stuff in the letter, looking for a reason, like how we want the board to respond. And my question is about the use of the term test and exam throughout the letter. And so I'm wondering why in the letter the FSA is referred to as a test and as an exam, if I'm missing something about how the FSA is used, because it's quite regularly referred to as a test or an exam.
And I'll just give you an opportunity to respond to that, Ms. Cornthwaite. Oh, she's frozen. Nope, there you go. You might be still muted. Can't figure out if she's still muted or... Can't hear you, Joe.
Can you hear me now? Have you got me now?
Yep, we do.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I think the reason for this choice is that it's the perspective of teachers that these are tests. And so they're referred to as such in the letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
Would you like to follow up, Trustee Higginson?
Yes, please. I guess I would have to follow that up then to our superintendent to know if this information is utilized as a test or as an exam in any way in our district, and if you could possibly provide some information to the board then about the difference between a test and an exam and an assessment.
Yeah, this is called an assessment because it doesn't go towards any grading, which a test or an exam would. And an assessment, and this particular assessment is used to assess student knowledge and to inform instruction for teachers.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Barron.
Yes, thank you. Through the chair, could you hear me? I think I'm echoing. Okay, great. I appreciate that this topic was brought forward to this meeting for further discussion. I do have a motion pertaining to this particular discussion that I was hoping to bring forward, and I was wondering, I'm wondering when you would like, when's good for you, Chair, for me to bring that motion forward? I would like to bring one forward under this topic.
I'd just like to see if there's a few more. I see a few more questions in the chat box I'd like to get to first. Make sure everyone has an understanding of, and then we'll come back to your motion.
Great, thanks so much.
Ms. Lee.
Hi there. Can you see me and hear me?
Yep.
Hi, okay. I just have a couple of questions just regarding some of the language. It says that they're asking trustees to honor parent requests to withdraw their children from writing the assessments. And then at the bottom, it says that they're wanting to ensure that parent choice is honored and that parents will be protected from questioning and coercion. I'm slightly confused by that. It's parents understanding that this assessment is mandated under the BC School Act to write. And if a parent is not wanting their child to write it, I think that there is some discussion that needs to be had on some clarification as to why that is. And I'm not quite sure who they are referring should the parent talk to about that, if it's not the principal.
Okay, I don't directly have an answer to that. I'm wondering who, Ms. Cornthwaite, if you're still there, if you can, even if you maybe just turn on your audio, because it was your letter, so I will, or the NDTA's letter, so if we could get some clarification around that. Oops. Anybody? Okay, I can't get Joe here. I can certainly, no, I'm Mr. Saywell, can you maybe help us with this question? Or someone from Learning Services, maybe? I'm not quite sure how to address this.
I'm not quite sure if we could maybe re-ask the question, because I feel that the question is about the letter and some of the wording in the letter, and it's not our letter.
Fair enough. Okay.
And if you could just, any information that I could help with, I will, but I'm not the author of the letter. I'm not even actually sure of the contents, to be quite frank.
Yeah, no, I'm specifically asking for clarification on the letter because I'm just confused by the language in the letter. That's all.
And Joe has, oh, okay. It says, Joe says, sorry, I don't have audio. However, I know principals have called parents in the past. And that's all I can get. That's all I got from her at this point. Okay, so we may have to come back to that. Trustee Stanley.
Hi. So I guess I will follow up on this aspect of the conversation, because the word mandated was just used. So I just want to make sure that you know, parents do have the capacity for free and informed consent, which also is also the right to withdraw their child should they choose, and that my understanding is that that is acknowledged, but at issue is whether parents, when parents choose to do that, whether or not principals follow up with some form of communication to when parents indicate that that's their choice. Can I just make sure that we're all on the same playing field, and that's fundamentally the conversation, that parents do indeed have choice, like they would with any assessment measure, and that it's at issue is the role of principals calling.
I'm gonna leave that to you, Mr. Superintendent.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Madam Chair. Of course, parents can opt out of any assessment, including this one. The difference with the FSA, of course, this is mandated by the Ministry of Education through ministerial order and in the School Act. So there is a lot of misinformation out there about the FSA. So we want to ensure that parents have the correct information. And our job is to ensure that every student in grade 4 and 7 writes. That's not a hill to die on. And if a parent doesn't want their son or daughter to write it, then they won't write it.
Trustee Stanley, you have a follow-up.
I do. Again, my mute, you can hear me?
Yep.
My mute button's not working, sorry, or it's odd. So in other words, and just to make sure that I'm correct on this, parents are not mandated to have their children take the test. The Ministry of Education mandates the school district to provide the test. And so that's what the mandate, when we talk about the word mandated, that's the only mandate is to the school district.
Yes, can I respond?
You may.
Through you, Madam Chair, districts are required by BC School Act to administer the FSA to all students in grade 4 and grade 7.
Thank you. I just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay. Now, Trustee Higginson, I see you on the list, but I'm going to go to Trustee O'Neill first because it pertains to Ms. Lee's question. So, Trustee O'Neill?
Actually, Trustee Stanley, that was exactly the follow-up I needed. I needed to understand what our process was and how we were mandated, if you will, to provide these assessments. So I'm clear now. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Then now to you, Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. This may cause another communication or technical glitch. Joe, it's another question through the chair to the NDTA rep. I'm also confused about the statement that the FSA is not aligned with the new curriculum when the new and updated FSA was written with teachers and it is aligned to the new curriculum. And in fact, if you go to the Ministry FSA site, they actually link it directly to areas of the new curriculum, in particular, you know, core competencies, big ideas, and the overall curricular expectations from the previous grade. So I'm curious about what parts of the new curriculum that you don't feel it's aligned with.
Okay, I'm gonna give Ms. Cornthwaite. Would you like to, can you respond to that for us, please?
I think so. I think
Yeah.
I'm back. Thank you. So yes, where it doesn't align is in the assessment itself. So it does not meet any of the requirements of the new curriculum in terms of the learning outcomes. There's nothing about the test that's directly linked to those particular learning outcomes. It's an assessment of skills, and those skills may be part of the curriculum, but the test or the assessment itself is not it's not meeting any of those needs of the curriculum, and therefore does not align, in our opinion.
Okay. Yeah, a follow-up, Trustee Higginson?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I actually would like us to to stop calling it a test, because it's not, as we've just been explained. A test and an exam are 4 marks, and this is an assessment which assesses student knowledge. But I'm still again confused by that statement, because it actually does connect to the big ideas, and it does have a collaboration activity, which is part of it. It has real life context questions. It has problem solving. It has understanding and interpretation that are all connected to the curriculum in the year prior to the student writing it, that they were expected to have mastered prior to. So I don't feel then that it's not connected to the new curriculum, unless there's something more specific that you would like to add to that.
I think specific to this past year in particular, not all of the outcomes of the curriculum were covered this past year. As we know, teachers had to revise the curricular expectations this last year, and not everything that was listed in the curricular and outcomes were covered by teachers. It was an emergency response, and so teachers therefore covered some of the learning outcomes, and they had to pare down the expectations. And certainly this coming year, there would not necessarily be an accurate reflection of student progress, because not all outcomes were delivered last year.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Cornthwaite. So I think I'm gonna stop this here, because I can see there's a disagreement between interpretations, and I really don't want it to turn into an argument. I think Ms. Cornthwaite has made it clear what their stance is and what their intent was and what they've said. So I've got a few other questions. I missed Trustee Keller, so I'm going to go back to him.
Thank you. So I have a question for staff. Am I able to ask a general question with respect to content related to the letter, or is it can only be in the letter?
No, it can be related.
Okay, thank you. So a question through the chair to staff. I wonder if somebody may be able to comment with respect to whether the FSA has been or will be modified in any way to take into account the portions of the curriculum that weren't able to be delivered last year, and how the results may not accurately reflect learning at this time because of the very difficult and strange time that we were in the spring.
Through you, Madam Chair, if that's all right. Perhaps I could start. Yes. And perhaps I see Ms. Tate there as well. My belief is, well, I know that in fact that this is why the ministry has delayed the test, postponed it until January, for that very reason. Thank you.
Okay, yes, Ms. Tate?
I was going to almost say the same thing, that teachers have been given additional time, or learning has been given more time to occur. And teachers are aware that what occurred during COVID and what didn't occur during COVID, this is not a test or an examination, it's an assessment to inform their instruction. So they are going to learn what students have learned and what they didn't, and then they can start their teaching. So I don't know, it's not going to make much difference where their score lands, or whether they're able to answer 2 questions or 10 questions. That's all information for the teacher to then begin their instruction.
Okay, thank you. And I'm going to give you a follow-up, Trustee Keller.
Great, thank you. That's what I through the chair, sort of had expected. How long does it typically take for the FSA results to come back so that the teacher can sort of use the results to inform their teaching, given the fact that, it's been delayed till January? Does that give us enough time to implement, some changes in the classroom?
Through the chair, I had to step out for just a moment. If Director, because I didn't hear the entire question, if Director Poulin could jump on. I think maybe it was about timelines. I know that the online component. Okay, yeah, that'd be great, Jack. If you could take that.
No, for sure. So the assessment would run from January to mid-February. We were looking at doing the marking within about a week after that. And of course, some of it's done online, and then the other written parts are marked. And so the results could be back to schools prior to spring break or very shortly afterwards, and back out to families.
Okay, thank you. All right, I see that I have a question still, another question from Trustee Higginson, and I have another one from Trustee Barron, both of whom have spoken. Is there anyone else who has questions? Oh, you don't?
No, I do.
Okay.
I don't know if Trustee Barron's had a chance to actually ask her question. Has she before her motion?
No, I don't know. Trustee Barron, do you have a question?
Thank you. I did have a question that Trustee Stanley did address. I feel like what I would like to say can be attached to the motion that I'd like to bring forward, so I can wait until we're ready for my motion. Thank you, Trustee
Okay,
Higginson.
thank you.
And
Trustee Stanley, then can you leave would you like to leave yours then as well? Okay, Trustee Higginson.
Thank you. It's just one last question about the letter. Is when would be a good time? If it says in here that the data generated does not inform teaching and learning because of the delay in providing results to schools. And so I'm wondering when knowing that this is a province mandated assessment, when would the NDTA feel is a good time in the year for this to be of most value to teachers?
Okay, I'll let you answer that, Ms. Cornway.
Well, as you know, our position on the FSA is that we feel that no time is a good time. We would rather see the FSA be replaced with classroom-based assessments. And the most effective time for those assessments is at the beginning of the academic year. So we're talking beginning of September is when teachers are doing their assessments of their classes to find out where students are in terms of their progress from last year and any skill gaps that they have. Most teachers know where their students are by September 30th, and their practice is well informed. So I feel personally, and I know that the BCTF feels as well, that no time is a good time for an FSA.
Okay, I'm going to give you one follow-up, Trustee Higginson, if you have one.
Yep, thanks. So here, what I'm hearing you say is, to be able to use it as a proper sort of formative assessment, knowing that the ministry, we've had 2 governments now who are utilizing this. It's not really going anywhere. So what I'm hearing from you is that in order for it to be utilized, if a teacher would like it to be as a formative assessment, that it should then be written, because we don't have a choice according to the superintendent. We've heard that this is a ministry mandated assessment, that it should be written before the end of September for it to be useful to teachers.
Through the chair, thank you. Any assessment that teachers are doing, yes, is in the beginning of September, because that best informs our practice and shows us where students are. If we're looking at last year's learning and basing the assessments on planning for our classrooms, yes, the best time is that time, as we saw in the Nlps screeners that we are using within our schools. We do those in September to inform our practice at that point. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right, at this point, we do have a motion from Trustee Barron, and I'm going to take the liberty of dealing with the motion first, because I believe it will, depending on the outcome of the motion, it may impact our decision around the correspondence. So I'm going to ask Trustee Barron to read her motion.
Yes, thank you. Can I? Okay, I'll just go straight to the motion. I wanted to say something before the motion.
You may.
Is that okay?
You have
I just wanted to say that I appreciated the information that was brought forward to us at the beginning of this meeting around the various assessment tools that are being used in our classrooms. And I do feel that that helps put things into perspective around the FSAs as well. So that's all valuable information. Based on the information that we've heard tonight around the FSA being ministry mandated to be administered by the district, not specifically that principals need to call parents, I do have a motion that I was hoping to bring forward.
Could I, before we go there?
Yes,
please.
Yeah, just so we're clear, I was going by memory, so let me tell you what the ministerial order says. For the purpose of assessing the effectiveness of educational programs through assessment, a board or Francophone Education Authority must ensure that the assessments are administered and completed, and the data collected from the assessments are transmitted to the minister. So that's in short what the assessment order states.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, then, yeah.
So what I would like, if it's okay with you, I will post my motion in the comments for others to be able to see, and then I can read that. Thank you for allowing me to comment prior to the motion around some thoughts that I had. Thank you. Would you like me to read the motion?
Yes, please.
Chair? Okay, thank you. The motion that I want to bring forward this evening is that the Education Committee recommend to the Board of Education to support parents' rights to free and informed consent regarding their child's participation in the Foundation Skills Assessment, the FSA, through the direction to principals to not contact parents in response to the withdrawal of their child from the FSAs for the school year of 2020-2021.
Seconded by Trustee Keller. Would you like to open debate, Miss Trustee Barron?
I would, thank you. Yeah, so a few reasons why I'm bringing this motion forward tonight. As we've, the FSAs have been an ongoing discussion during and before my time as a trustee. And although this government mandate assessment has been postponed until January, I feel it is important that we make decisions around how we would like to move forward as a board. And I'm putting this motion forward as I feel it's important for parents to have the ability to withdraw their child from writing this assessment without additional pressures of being placed on their decision. There's a variety of exceptional circumstances that may lead parents to decide their child should withdraw from this assessment, and this decision should be respected, in my opinion. I believe that COVID-19 has further exacerbated the need for us to make decisions around how we respond to parents who make this challenging decision to withdraw their child. My goal is for the board to have a discussion and to decide how we would like to move forward, and to ensure that there's time to provide clear communication around such process to staff. Following up with parents who make the decision to withdraw their child from the FSAs, in my opinion, is not a good use of our principals' valuable time that could be used focused on the many diverse needs within our schools. And so I just wanted to make sure, because this is important to me, that I had my thoughts down on paper, but I thank you, Chair, for allowing me to bring this motion forward. And those are my primary thoughts around why I wanted to bring that motion forward this evening.
Thank you. All right, Trustee Wilkinson first.
Hello. So I guess my comment for this is that, you know, my experience with it, and I've had a personal experience with it, where a principal has contacted me to inform me and when I first decided when my kids were younger, I didn't want them to write it, and then I got some more information about it. And so as much as I wholeheartedly support parents' rights to choose what their children do, the concern is when there's letters going home from you know, one perspective, it's important to get both perspectives, and that there's and I don't believe there's coercion involved. I think it's information, and I think that it's another touch point when we're talking about it's never a bad thing to have face-to-face contact with parents, and if the issue is around some anxiety around testing, whatever it is, like that's just information. It's great information to have, and sometimes it's only that point of contact that we get that information. And so I actually think that that's a really good use of time. And so for that reason, I'm just not in support of the motion. Like I said, as much as I am in absolute support of if parents are adamant and they feel they're confident in their decision, then, you know, I believe that their decision is respected, and it's not I don't know, it's, you know, they're not trying to change their mind, they're trying to inform. And that's the part that I support. Thank you.
Trustee Stanley.
Thank you. I just wanted to gather a little bit more information so I feel like I can make an informed decision here. I see these as, you know, this is not a conversation about the FSA. This is a conversation about how we approach parents or how we inform parents about the FSA. Sorry. And I don't quite know how we got here. So I guess I'm seeking some historical information. Why, you know, we have come to a point where after parents give us their opinion, we then call them up to talk about their opinion or their choice. So I'm wondering, you know, how do we get there versus why are we not? And then there's been concern about, you know, letters being sent out. So there's a couple of different ways of looking at this. Why aren't we sending out information that we would like to, or the school district would like to send out about the tests? And then parents can review whatever information is available and make their decision. You know, are we doing that? But I don't know how we got to the point of the additional, if there is, phone call home. I can understand concerns about that. I can understand there'd be pressures in that. It would be awkward. So can somebody let me know how we got there? What was the decision? I know this board has voted on it before, but maybe I could hear the story, please.
Could I, and then perhaps Secretary Treasurer Walsh could weigh in through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
The reason for that, Trustee Stanley, is that principals may excuse a student in the event of a family emergency, a lengthy illness, or other extenuating circumstances. The phone call is, again, to ensure that the parent has the correct information and to appreciate which category we're looking at when we excuse that student. That's all. And when the principal has had a conversation and can appreciate the reasons, because it has to be the principal that excuses the student, then everything's fine.
Yes, Mr. Walsh.
And through you, Madam Chair. So the other piece just to bring up is the statutory framework behind the FSA. So the superintendent just mentioned the student learning assessment order. So it does say in section 2A, the assessments for the purpose of assessing effectiveness of educational programs through assessments, a board or francophone educational authority must ensure that the assessments are administered and completed and the data is collected from the assessments are transmitted to the minister in accordance with the assessment protocols, instructions, and invigilation procedures sent to the board of the Francophone Authority. So it's the second part of that line where the statutory issue arises, and the instructions include this statement. Based on the exceptions identified above, administrators may identify students who may be excused from 1, 2, or all 3 components of the FSA. Students may only be excused from participating in consultation with the student's parent or guardian. And then this is the important one. The student's parent or guardian must be notified prior to the administration date by letter or telephone call. And so administrators or public schools are to send a list of excused students to the superintendent, clearly stating the reasons for their excusal. So that's where the calls stem from in the first place. So it's just provides maybe a bit of background.
Thank you. All right, Trustee O'Neill.
No, I'll pass actually. That was what I was looking to find out, because I did also want to know why it was that we would be doing that follow-up call individually to parents who had determined their child would not be participating. So thank you.
All right, now we've got a small little concern in that I see, Ms. Lee, you've got a question, and technically we're in a motion. Okay, we do allow that now. Okay, thank you, Trustee Higginson. So, Ms. Lee, you can ask your question.
So my question is regarding communication around FSAs. The superintendent does send out a letter to parents describing what the FSAs are for. In my experience, the letter that gets sent home from teachers is the letter that has the opt-out box on that. Can someone clarify that that is the case? Just because from a parent's perspective, if you're getting a letter from a teacher saying that they don't support something, that could be misleading depending on the wording of the letter.
Through you, Madam Chair.
Yes.
You are correct. You are correct in that the opt-out form is attached to the teacher's letter.
You have something you wanted to add to that?
Yes, I just wanted to say that opt-out letter is part of the teacher's letter. It's not part of the package that comes from the district.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Higginson has a question.
Thank you. So many questions. A statement first that the letter that went home last year from the teachers did refer to this as a test 5 times as well, which is confusing. But my question is actually to the superintendent, and under the framework for enhancing student learning, which is part of, which is another ministerial order on that we are part of. Next year, we will have to report out. One of the measures that they are asking us to report out on is on our FSA results, that we'll have to report out publicly on our FSA results. Is that the case?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair, that is the case. We need to report out on the FSAs on that year, and we have to also report out on the 3-year trend for reading, writing, and numeracy, grades 4 and 7.
Can I have a follow-up?
Yes, you may.
Okay. So my follow-up is that it is my understanding that the last time the board had a motion on this, it did impact the number of people who wrote the FSAs and did have an impact on our FSA results. Just my concern about this is that if we're going to be reporting publicly to our community as a result of the, I can't remember what they're calling it, the framework for enhancing student learning report, we would hope that we would have the most up-to-date and fulsome information that we could get. And I believe that the last time we had a motion on this, it did impact the writing and results. Am I correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, you are absolutely correct, Trustee Higginson.
Okay. Do we have anyone else who wishes to speak to the motion on the floor? Pardon? Trustee Higginson.
Okay, so not a question, but wishing to speak to it, that I am not in favor of this motion because it talks about free and informed consent, and I'm really concerned that the information that families are given is not reliable, to be honest, when we've just had the assessment referred to as a test or an exam in the actual letter that we have, when we have information in the letter that was sent to us that's you know, not correct. And then also when it's referred to as a test in the actual letter that the parents have to do that little pull-off sign on. So I also think that you know, we just heard from our superintendents earlier in the meeting about the importance of district-wide information. And you know, we have to remember as well that this is a provincial assessment that the province uses. And so the province also has a need for provincial-wide assessment the same way we have a need for district assessment. And so I think it's important for us to remember that. And the other thing that I would be remiss if I didn't say out loud that I learned sitting on that provincial assessment committee that I sat on to do the secondary assessments was how important the information from these assessments are to FNESC and the First Nations Education Steering Committee. And our board, you know, has prioritized the achievement rates of Indigenous students in our district as very, very important. And FNESC relies heavily on this data for their advocacy as a system measure for how we're doing, particularly to address things like the racism of low expectations. And so I think that knowing the importance of this data to FNESC, it's also very important for our district to ensure that knowing that FNESC uses it so heavily, that we have the most reliable data set possible for FNESC to utilize in their advocacy at the provincial level. So I'm not in favor of the motion at this point because I do feel that conversation with the principal is valuable to what Trustee Wilkinson said. And our stance on the ranking of schools is well known. We've advocated for it on this board as well at the provincial level. So I think that that's something that we can work on separately, but I do believe at this point that having reliable data for FNESC is very key, and that's one of the big reasons why. I also think it's important to remember that if a child falls behind by grade 4, they're 8 times less likely to graduate. And if they haven't caught up by grade 7, they're 4 times more likely to have contact with the criminal justice system before the age of 18. And so I think that this is something that it's just another tool in our toolbox that we would want to have the most reliable set of information for to address those really important factors for kids at those really critical ages. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, I see Trustee Stanley has a question. And I see Trustee Wilkinson has a comment. Does anyone else on any other trustees wish to speak to the motion before I give those two speakers an opportunity to speak? Okay, all right, I'll wait then. You can get in a moment then, Trustee O'Neill. Trustee Stanley.
Hi, I guess mine has changed from a question. So I don't view this as an issue about assessments. This is for me not a conversation about the FSA or other assessment measures that we may or may not do in this district and students' capabilities. For me, this is about the words that Trustee Higginson used, which is free and informed consent. And I think that we need to give, I have faith in parents' abilities to make the decisions that are right for their families. And, I'm assuming that we provide families with all the relevant information when we inform them about the tests. And so I think it's important that we respect their capabilities to make decisions that are right for their own families, particularly in the context of a pandemic and stress levels. I you know, this experience, and I'm going to speak from personal experience, was, you know, terrible for my son. So I view that, but I know that the parent can make their decision that's right for their family, and I think that we need to respect that. So for me, it's about free and informed consent, and that's why I support the motion. It's not about the SAs, it's not about assessment. My other issue is during this pandemic, someone mentioned about principal time. That's the other factor for me here, is that we have a lot of stuff going on, and this, for me, is not the best use for principals to be calling parents about this. I'd like us to see us inform families when we inform them about the test initially, but I don't think that we should be calling them up and asking them to justify their decision. So I am in favor of the motion. Thanks.
Trustee Wilkinson?
So I have a couple of things, because Trustee Stanley just brought up a few points that I wanted to make too, because, you know, on the same side of the coin, I also agree with free and informed consent. And I think that, you know, the issue is that when a letter goes home that says your child can opt out of a test or an exam, and a teacher is saying, you know, this is what you can do, then there needs to be some information that needs to happen, because, you know, that's how that starts, is, okay, do they want to take an exam? No, of course they don't. So we opt them out. And then I think there needs to be another layer to that. And I don't think it's a question where they have to justify their decision. I think that there's times when there's opinions that are involved in that, and I think that it's important to have everybody's side to that, right? The other piece to that for me, and I know that there's some information in the comments, is that, you know, I deplore the fact that schools are ranked. I think it's horrible, and I think that, you know, really what we should be focusing on is trustees, school boards, and teachers getting together to try and stop that from happening, because that's the part that we need to inform people of, and so that people understand and they know that when schools are being ranked, that's not that's not, there's no such thing as that. And so that way, you know, that's where we should be getting together and informing together how that is not, it's not a ranking. It doesn't mean anything, right? So, you know, sure would be nice if we could join forces on that. But anyway, I digress, sorry.
Thank you. Trustee O'Neill, did you want to speak?
I will, thank you. And I wrote perhaps I wanted to speak. So I'm just going to share some thoughts as well. And I'm, you know, still sitting on this a bit, but, you know, from I knew this was coming, and from, you know, my perspective, and I think, you know, if I heard, you know, Joe's statements and answers to a number of questions, you know, in relation to the letter, that really the teachers are fundamentally opposed to this, the FSA. And, you know, when the question was asked about whether this would be a good time, that no time's a good time. I like, you know, I'd like to explore this more, which is why I want more information on this. But I do see some problems with, you know, the particular language we're using here, because we're not as informed as we possibly could be on this. You know, for example, like, what does it look like for our administrative staff to comply with the School Act and the ministerial order? You know, what obligation do they have to check those boxes? Is there another way that this could be done if these, you know, follow-up phone calls are seen as, you know, stifling the right of the parent to make these decisions? And, you know, just lastly, to Wilkinson's points, I too deplore how these results are used in the rankings of schools. You know, in the sort of quick research I was able to do on some of the, you know, the lobbies against the FSA assessments, and I realized that this isn't necessarily what this motion is about, but I think that that is an intention as well. You know, I see that there has been some good collaborative work done with districts, with our provincial bodies and government in addressing some of this, and I think that that's good work that we can put our minds to as well. So, you know, if it's the will of the board to, you know, move this to a regular meeting, yeah, I think that there's more information to be had. I don't necessarily agree with some of the statements that have been made, you know, and I'd want to hear more perspectives from some of the parents who have been in this situation themselves, as we've heard a bit of tonight already. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee O'Neill. Trustee Higginson is asked to make a last comment, and I want to give Trustee Barron an opportunity to close debate. But before I do all that, is there anyone who hasn't really had a chance to speak amongst trustees that wants to speak? And or staff? Okay, then Trustee Higginson.
Thanks. Just one thing, I think I'm really conscious of the board passing a motion about principals, because I think that it's a little bit of a board overreach, and I know that I was also the person who moved the motion in 2015, I think, that had this, but I was also the person who moved the motion to rescind that motion. But I also, so I'm a little concerned about that. But overall, I'm also wondering, based on what what Trustee O'Neill just said, is that I think, you know, it's hard for us, for me at least, to separate this conversation about parent-informed consent from the overall politicization of the FSA. And so I'm wondering if this board doesn't need more time. And I think it would actually be beneficial for us to invite the ministry to tell us why this information is so important to them. I mean, two different governments with two different colors have held on to it. You know, they've been made changes to it. So it feels to me like there's information that, you know, I don't think that we should put our staff in the position of having to speak for the ministry, because that's not their job. I like that they're focused on our students here, on the students of ST68. So I think that, to Trustee O'Neill's point, there's still a lot of information that's important for us to understand fully, particularly why this is so important to them, and invite them to tell us that information. So that we can make a decision, because I don't feel like what happens, you know, to Trustee Wilkinson's point, is free and informed consent right now.
All right, seeing nobody else wanting to speak to the motion, Trustee Barron, would you like to close debate?
Yes, thank you. Oh, geez, it is challenging to sit on the side and say nothing during that whole conversation. I so appreciate, though, hearing all the different perspectives and thoughts. And, you know, quite honestly, that was what I was hoping for, was for us to be able to have a good conversation and to share opinions. Sometimes the structure of our board meetings doesn't allow us to have free-formed conversations where we can brainstorm and share ideas, unfortunately, but at least we have this, which is something in the right direction, in my opinion. You know, I appreciate so many of the comments that have been brought up, and I do agree it is challenging to differentiate between this motion and the specifics around how we communicate with parents around the FSAs and the politicization of the FSAs themselves. And so I do appreciate that. I believe that there is you know, there's much conversation to be had around the FSAs and the benefits and costs to our students of the FSAs, and would love to continue that conversation. In my mind, the immediate discussion that would need to be had first was around how we're communicating with parents around this FSA. And I do appreciate the specific language in the mandate coming forward. And I always find it interesting to hear interpretations of mandated language, because when I read the mandate, it says students may be excused in consultation with the student's parent and I believe it said and or guardian. The student's parent or guardian must be notified prior to administration date. And so I find it interesting that we got to sending letters to, or phoning our parents and providing information around the FSAs based on that. Because when I read that it is the parent's right to make the decision to excuse their child, and that it is our responsibility to ensure that parents are notified to allow the parent the capacity to do what they feel is best for their child during that time frame. I don't read that as we need to have principals use their valuable time to contact parents. Because the reality is that a phone call from a principal, regardless of the intentions and dependent on the relationship, may be interpreted as a what's the word I'm looking for? I'm trying to ensure that it's, the right word, but I just have concerns is what I'm trying to say around a principal calling our parents, and I don't feel as though it is a good use of their time, in particular during COVID right now. And so I brought this motion forward for us to put forward a directive for principals to not contact parents during this year, during COVID, and for us to reassess next year and to continue the discussion around the FSAs in general.
Thank you. Okay. All those in favor of the motion, if you could type yes in the chat box. If you're opposed, you can type no. Okay, who has not? Just waiting for Trustee O'Neill, I think. One, two, three, four. I believe, if my counting is correct, the motion passes. I'm gonna ask Miss Matthews just to help me double check my counting. 1, 2. All right, thank you. Motion passes. Opposed are Trustee Wilkinson, Trustee Higginson, and Trustee Robinson. All right. So this leaves us with one final thing to do. We still have to ask the board, give the board direction regarding what to do with the letter. Given that we have addressed what has been requested in the letter, does anyone have a suggestion? I have a suggestion, but as the chair, I'm not sure I can make it.
Can you please repeat that?
Just basically, we have the correspondence that the NETA sent us, and we always, with correspondence, we respond to it one way or another, whether it's receiving it and filing it, or whether it's sending a letter, having the chair send a letter. Yeah, so we have been directed as this committee to look at the letter and then give a direction to the board for the, I believe, for the next meeting, for the next board meeting, as to how to respond to the letter. Trustee O'Neill, did you want to say something? And then Trustee Keller.
Sorry, I put point, but I can go after Keller.
Okay, Trustee Keller.
Yes, thank you. I would support asking the chair to provide a response. And I like the ideas that Trustee Higginson and perhaps some of the others had brought up as well around trying to get somebody from the ministry to come in and talk to us about the FSA and learn a little bit more and get some more information and you know, we can all, especially myself, can only speak for myself, but to be as informed as possible for future years. So I think that's what I'd like to see. Thank you.
Okay, so are you moving that as a motion? First of all, actually, before you do that, Trustee O'Neill, did you have something you want to say?
Yeah, I suppose a general follow-up would be in order. I guess I just feel like this item is sort of action to another meeting in a sense. And also, you know, I just want to say that this has been a great forum to have this discussion because, you know, some of our partners are here at the table and have voice and have been able to contribute to that. So yes, if it's a matter of sort of a formal response, aside from sort of having participated in the discussion tonight, I think an update, but I just think that there may be further follow-up happening as we sort of move through this. So
yes,
that was my point.
Okay, so then Trustee Keller has made a suggestion, and I guess, Trustee Keller, I'm going to ask you to make that as a motion that we refer it to the, okay, move that the letter be referred to the board for a response from the chair. And can I get a seconder? Seconded by Trustee Barron. Any discussion? Seeing those in favor, is anyone opposed to the motion? Oh, Trustee Barron, did you want to speak?
Apologies, Chair. Thank you. Yes, I do agree with this this recommendation put forward by Trustee Keller. I do feel that it would be appropriate for us to refer this to the board chair for response. However, I would like to suggest, as has previously been said, that we bring this topic forward for a future meeting. However, that can be decided at a future agenda setting when would be most appropriate to do so. So I think in the short term, this is the recommendation that I would approve, that I would support is the word I'm looking for.
That would be my suggestion as well, that the issue of bringing it forward to a separate agenda, to another agenda could be sent to the chair as a request for agenda setting. So any further discussion? Okay, anyone opposed to this motion? Seeing no opposition, the letter will be, the motion passes, and we recommend that referred to the board for a response from the chair. All right, thank you. We have no unfinished business. We have no new business. Miss Matthews, do we have any questions from question period? We have no questions. Given that, I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Trustee Stanley moves we adjourn. Trustee Barron second. Anyone opposed to adjournment? Seeing no opposition, we are adjourned. Thank you all for coming.